is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh. This is Native Nomads, and today we're going to be talking about the Phase 1 part of our Lexus GX460 Overland build that we started this week. So before we get started today, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video and every video you will see here on the channel, and that is Adventure Rig Shop. AdventureRigShop.com is where you can find all of the off-road and overlanding parts, pieces, and components for your rig. We know it's summer season and we know people are trying to find the best deals, so hop over to Adventure Rig Shop after this video is done. The link will be in the description. Take a look at what they have, and if you're looking for specific GX460 stuff, all of those products will be added probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks, so check back to AdventureRigShop.com so you can outfit your GX460 for whatever you plan to use it for. Okay, now that that's all out of the way, let's talk GX460 and what we have done so far and why we went the route that we went. So I'm going to try to keep this as short-winded as possible, but there are a lot of things to talk about and a lot of things that I think you should know, especially if you're building a GX460 in any capacity. This is probably some good information for you to have before you start spending all of your hard-earned dollars on different pieces and different components to get your rig ready for the trail. So I'm going to start with the stuff that is not so tantalizing. It's not going to be the fun stuff that you want to hear about yet. That stuff will come in the end of this video where we talk about the lift, suspension, tires, wheels, all of that. But what I want to talk about first is the things that were necessary for us to get done in order so we can move on to the next step, and that next step being all of the wheels, tires, and suspension. So if you're new to the GX world, like myself, we have had we've had several off-road vehicles in the past, and we started with Jeeps, then the Gladiator, then the Power Wagon, Subaru Outback, Sprinter van, and now we have landed in the Toyota world with the GX460. Now, our GX460 is a 2019 GX460. This is a used vehicle that we got for a really good price because my intentions with this build are to make it just practical. I have spent a lot of time, money, and effort in the past building these vehicles beyond the intended use. And for the GX460, I just want to keep it simple. I want it to have the components that it absolutely needs and nothing more. I don't need all of the frills and all of the crazy overland gear that you see everybody running around on their car with, but they probably never use. That is not a shot at you or a jab at you or anybody you know. I have fallen into that same category in the past and had all of these things on all of my vehicles that I never used. And I don't know if it's just me getting old or if what's going on in my life, but I just need things simple. I need things simple, I need things to work, and I need it to get my family from point A to point B in the most realistic and practical way possible. So, insert used 2019 Lexus GX460. Now, when we started talking about all the things I wanted to do with this build, we are working with a company here locally to do all of the upfitting, and that is DNR Motors. I will put the information and the link, contact, all that stuff in the description if you're local to Columbus, Ohio, or you are around the tri or quad state area and you're looking for a true Toyota Lexus automotive off-road shop. None of that fancy stuff. They're just like hardcore dudes who have built GX460s. They drive them every single day for work, but they also wheel them extremely hard on the weekends. That's my goal. I want something that's practical. I want something that I can drive long distances, because we do that often in the overland world, that is economical on the road and not getting 7 or 8 miles per gallon, but can also get me through some pretty difficult terrain. That's why we chose the GX460, and that's why we're doing the build the way that we're doing it. So I want to talk first about what we did up front to help the vehicle out. We did add a transmission cooler to the front of the vehicle, and that was one of the first things that we had discussed, because for whatever reason, the GX460, at least in my model year, and I'm not sure if it's different for other model years, has no transmission cooler whatsoever. And the transmission cooler basically works like a radiator. It takes fluid through the radiator, and then it passes it back to the transmission, keeping the transmission as cool as possible. There's conflicting information about the best operating temperature for your transmission. Some people say 160, some people say 180. I don't know the exact answer, but what I do know is towing through mountains without a turbo, if we do intend to tow, and being up high elevation, not having the proper airflow for the transmission to cool itself, and especially going through hard rocky trails or rough terrain, we need to make sure that the transmission stays cool, because the last thing you want to do is have a transmission issue when you're 100 miles from the next living, breathing person. So we did add a transmission cooler up front. Now, I don't know if there's a necessary specific company that you should go with or a specific product. I will put some information about the products that we've used on our build, but I think a transmission cooler for a GX460 specifically, because it is a big V8, it is a big heavy vehicle, it doesn't have any cooling power to the transmission. It's something that you should definitely consider if you intend to take this thing off the beaten path. Another thing that we did as we were assembling the lift and putting everything together is we put in a bracket for your Panhard bar. So the Panhard bar is the bar that goes from driver to passenger on the rear of the vehicle. It sits just above the axle and just behind and above the axle. Your Panhard bar just basically keeps your vehicle sturdy. Well, when you lift your vehicle, your Panhard bar then tilts, and it could cause that axle to pull to one direction or the other. So when you're doing that, you want to have some type of bracket that increases the Panhard height on the driver's side and creates a more linear or a more straight across right to left look, because you don't want that Panhard bar to be at a tilt. So we used M-Keith. I will put that link in the description as well. M-Keith is a product that DNR Motors recommended to us because they use them. It's a small company. He makes these by himself. He ships them to you, and it has to be welded onto your vehicle. So the GX does require a little bit of a fab work to get it to where it needs to be. Luckily, DNR Motors, the guys there, Real J-Rod Customs on Instagram, is awesome at fabrication, and he's a great welder. So he was able to plug that M-Keith bracket into the original Panhard bar location, weld it up, and paint it with a 2-part epoxy. That was something that they mentioned to me that they made kind of a point about, is you want to make sure you're using a 2-part epoxy on your any paint or metal work that you're doing to avoid any future rusting issues. Just spraying it will definitely do the job for a period of time, but if you can use a 2-part epoxy, or your shop is going to do this, I would recommend to you that you tell them you would like them to use a PPG 2-part epoxy. That way it keeps your components fresh, especially when you're cutting metal brackets and you're re-welding. It's important to make sure that the longevity of those components outlast the vehicle. So that was the one modification in the rear that we had to do in order to get the lift and the ride and everything the way that we wanted. Now, moving up front, like I said, we have bought a used 2019 with 43,000 miles on it. When we started inspecting this thing, it has the original battery. So there's the original battery from Lexus Toyota, which is fine, but we are replacing that with a really good upgradable AGM battery, because I don't want to use or rely on that old battery. It's only a matter of time before that thing fails, and it's probably been through some harsh winters here in Ohio, so we are going to go ahead and switch that out to an AGM battery. We also had to put on some new brakes. We did calipers, we're doing rotors, and we're doing brake pads up front, because for whatever reason our front right or passenger side caliper is starting to seize, and that is, from what I understand, something that you will deal with if you have a GX460. Sometimes you will have seizure happen in your caliper, and that needs to be replaced. And you can notice that when you start to get like a slight jerk of the steering wheel, or it feels like it's riding a little rough, but the alignment's good, the tire pressure is good, the tires are good. You may want to look to your caliper and see if you have any seizing issues going on up in either one of those, and replace them if you do. But that was something we needed to do. My wife got in the car originally and said the brakes are absolutely terrible. She tends to say that a lot, but she's always been right so far, so I have to give her credit. She her foot knows brakes. So we went ahead and replaced all the brakes. So now we're working with a really well balanced vehicle. And that's what I want the GX460 to be for my family. I don't need all the crazy stuff. Solid brakes, new tires, all of the adjustment points done properly, especially with that bracket for the Panhard bar. All those little things add up. Now, moving up a little bit further, or actually behind the rotors, we did a body chop mount. Now, they're with the GX460, and I'm assuming 4Runners too. I don't know, but my assumption is it kind of all falls in line the same. With the GX460, if you intend to put bigger tires, like we did, on your vehicle, or rims with a slightly more negative offset to get those wheels and tires to stick out a little bit, give it more of an aggressive stance, then you are going to need to do a body chop mount. That sounds pretty sketchy, and it's sketchy for me because I'm not a welder and I'm not a fabricator. So when they started talking body chop mount, I'm thinking like, what exactly is it? But they only took like a small L notch out of the front of the vehicle in order for those tires to clear. So now when I'm turning, I'm at full flex. I am off-road in any way, or just turning into a parking lot, my tire is not going to be hitting the body of the vehicle. And again, that is another thing that needs to be done in order for you to clear bigger tires. Now, the bigger tires you go, the more modifications that you have to do to your wheel wells in order to get those tires to fit and work appropriately while you're on the trail. Now we can get to the good stuff. It's the stuff that you're actually here for, probably. Those were just the things that we had to do initially to get this thing rocking and rolling, so we know we have a solid foundation. Now that the solid foundation is built, the drop bracket for the Panhard bar is all in. Everything is solid with the brakes. We have the body chop mount done, re-welded, painted with the two-part epoxy. Everything is good. Now we're ready to put this thing back together. So what we went with in terms of suspension was the Dobinson IMS suspension kit. So you may wonder, like, well, why Dobinson? Well, Dobinson started as an Australian company, and if you're new to the off-road world, or maybe this is something you've been doing for a while, the Aussie guys generally have some of the best products, and a lot of the best products for the off-road community come from the Australian market, but it's sometimes really hard to get them here in the United States. Well, Dobinson has a USA branch, and Dobinson has a fantastic reputation of having really solid, no frills type of suspension. Now, we went with the IMS. This is not the three-way adjustable. So I want to talk about why, because I think it's important for anybody who is new to off-roading or new to overlanding or thinking about building a Lexus GX460 or something similar. We decided not to go with the three-way adjustable suspension. I had a three-way adjustable suspension in our Jeep Gladiator. It was a Falcon shocks, and it was great. But at the end of the day, for 90 or 95% of every single person that goes overlanding or off-roading, you're not going to notice the difference in a three-way adjustable suspension. There are guys and girls who would know and who are hardcore off-road people, I guess. There's a small group of those people. But if we're in the overland world and we're in the moderate off-road community, having a three-way adjustable suspension is not really necessary. The IMS suspension from Dobinson comes with the preload already set to it. So when you're ordering your IMS or any Dobinson suspension, but for me, the IMS, you want to think about the things that you're going to have on your vehicle once it's done. So your sliders, your skid plates, your bumpers, your winches, your refrigerators, your gear. Now, you're not going to have an exact idea because sometimes you'll have more people in there or you have more water in there. So it's never going to be perfect, but you want to account for these things as you're building your vehicle. In the past, I never did that. On our Gladiator, specifically on our Jeep JL, I never thought about the extra weight. It was just like, I know I need these things, but this is just what it is. And honestly, I wasn't able to get a tuned suspension from another company like I am from Dobinson, and that is something that is absolutely incredible. So my front coilovers are set to 213 millimeters. There is a collar on your your coilover that can be turned to compress the spring to give you more preload that will allow for more weight. So we use a 213 millimeter preload. And I think that would be good for just about anybody. Now, you would really have to know suspensions and you would have to know a lot of math to take it beyond that. And this may end up not being right. And if it's not heavy enough or the preload's not stiff enough or it's too soft or whatever it is, I can always come back and we could preload the springs further to give us a better ride. Right now, the vehicle is sitting at a really good rake and everything looks really well, but we have nothing in it. It's completely stock. So the IMS suspension comes with your front springs, your rear springs, your coilovers, all of the hardware and equipment, your upper control arms. It does not come with lower control arms. That's something that you can add in the future. And again, lower control arms, unless you're a hardcore off-road guy, it may not be something that you need to do, but it's always up to you to make that decision. So everything comes from Doppelson and it's all installed. It looks fantastic. Now for the wheels, we did a Stealth Custom Series bronze and black wheel to kind of go with the white. Same thing we kind of did on our Outback Wilderness. I'm bringing that over to the GX, so they mirror each other in a way. So they're both kind of Stormtrooper-ish, which is pretty cool. And we went with the BFG KO2 tire. And that is a 285 size, so it's basically a 33. Now, I only went up to a 33-inch tire because there's several reasons. The first one is gas mileage. The KO2s are already super heavy, and I want to retain some of that gas mileage. In the past, I did not care. I was just like, I don't care about the gas mileage. I want the biggest tires. I want the best this. And that was silly because I never used it the way that it should have been used. And I think these are things you need to take into consideration. Can you fit 35s on a GX? Yes. The guys at DNR have their GXs on 35s. I don't need that. 33s is plenty for me. It's going to retain some good gas mileage. It's going to ride well on the road. And the tire that I'm getting versus the tire that was on it is much heavier. So it's going to obviously reduce our gas mileage. Plus, we're raising the vehicle up, putting stuff on the roof. There's all of these things to take into consideration. So the BFG, for me, if you've been around the channel for a while, then you know that the BF Goodrich is something we've just always gone with. The KM3s, I got the KO2s on the van, I have the KO2s on the Outback Wilderness, and now I have the KO2s on the Lexus GX460. But if I was going to be using this vehicle in different type of terrain, I would have gone with the KM3s like I had on my Power Wagon because I would want an off-road, a more mud-centric off-road tire. This vehicle will be out in Arizona because we are going to be living at our home in Arizona more frequently now, and I want a vehicle that's going to be good in the desert, and I don't need a mud tire in Arizona because obviously it doesn't rain in Arizona very often. All right, so that's it for the Lexus GX460 build so far. This is phase one. We do have rock sliders, skid plates, bumpers, winches, roof rack, all of that stuff coming. I got to install lights, compressors, all of the other things. I got a drawer system I got to put in. There's a lot of stuff still to do, but this piece, having professionals do that for me and allow me to be a part of that at DNR Motors was freaking awesome. So if you are looking to at least speak with somebody about a GX build, I would speak to somebody who wheels their GX, who drives it daily and understands the platform. My GX is a 2019 Premium, so it does come with KDSS. I did not mention that there are a few KDSS components that you have to install as well with the Dobinson lift, but that's kind of besides the point. But all of that said, I hope this information was valuable to you in some way, shape, or form. If it was, please consider subscribing, liking the video, sharing it with somebody, and letting them know what we're kind of doing. We would appreciate that greatly. So until next time, I'll see you then.